Well, it is a special privilege to welcome R.A., and there are many important people in this room, and all of you are people of great renown and great visibility in your worlds, and in some cases all throughout the world. I see some faces here that would be recognized all over the planet. But there's probably not a name today in more newspapers in the world than the name R.A. Dickey. And so it's really special to have R.A. here. R.A., when we created this series called Heroes of Business, we were really concerned about the image that business had in the minds of our students. And if you think about the age of students today, many of them have grown up in an era where the only names they knew were names like Bernard Madoff and other people that were in the headlines because they were cheats, because they were frauds, because they stole, and because they went to prison. And so we thought 4 years ago, let's create a series and let's invite some people in who can be examples for our students and show our students that it's not only possible to be a great success in life, but also to be a great example in life. And so you follow in the footsteps of people like Bill Pollard, for example, who created the ServiceMaster Corporation, a multi-billion-dollar company. You follow in the footsteps of Sam Moore, who is the founder of the largest Christian publishing company in the world, Thomas Nelson. You follow in the footsteps of Steve Lynn, who was the chief executive officer of Sonic Drive-In Restaurants, one of the largest franchise restaurants in the United States. That really got our students' attention, by the way, when we brought Steve in. He was the second most popular person we've had. But we've had this great long string of people that we've brought in, and nobody, I think, exemplifies the challenges that all of us face and the perseverance that all of us have to overcome better than R.A. Dickey. Not only on a personal level, not only on a professional level, but on a family level. R.A. has had many challenges. If you've read his book, and this is an unabashed plug for you to go out and buy his book, please do wherever I wind up. Trust me, if you haven't read it, you will wish you had read it before today, and I hope you will read it because it is a transparent book by a man who wants you to know the true R.A. Dickey. R.A. has been through a lot. When R.A. was drafted by the Texas Rangers, he was drafted in the first round, and it was quite a thrill for him to be drafted. I know he was excited, not just to be drafted in the first round, but because the Rangers offered him a way to pay some of his bills, and they promised him a bonus of $750,000. Tell me if I'm telling this story wrong. I believe this is correct. And they said, well, you know, you have to take a physical, and we require that before we write the check. And so he went to the Rangers doctor, and the doctor said, you know, R.A., there's something I don't quite like about the way your arm hangs. And now this is a guy who had been pitching 90 to 100-mile-an-hour fastballs for the U.S. Olympic team and for the University of Tennessee, and a state champion pitcher from Montgomery Bell Academy. I mean, this is a guy who was having no pain with his arm at all, but the doctor said there's something not quite right about that. It's too loose. We want you to go see Frank Andrews in Birmingham, and if you don't know that name, he's the leading orthopedic surgeon, I guess, in the world, for elbows at least. And so R.A. went down to Birmingham, and they examined him. Frank Andrews looked at it and said, R.A., he said, in all my years of practicing medicine, I have never seen what I see today. You don't have a ULA ligament. It's impossible for you to throw a baseball. How do you do that? And R.A. said, I don't know, but I do. And so they marveled over that, and they wondered at the anatomy miracle that represented. That's the good news. The bad news is the Texas Rangers called him the next day and said, R.A., we're retracting our offer. We're not going to give you the money. And R.A. was devastated. What a challenge. They later offered him, I think, maybe just a fraction of that, maybe a 10% of that. R.A. did sign with the Rangers. But that began another major challenge in his life, and he spent, I guess, maybe a record amount of time in the minor leagues. How many years were you at Oklahoma City? Parts of 9 seasons. Can you imagine that, playing with the anticipation of going up to the major leagues but never quite being able to get over over that hump. So for 9 years, he and Ann made the trek back and forth, first to Florida in the spring and then to Oklahoma City for the season, then back to Nashville for the winter, and then over and over. You imagine how discouraged you would have been if you'd been in R.A. Dickey's shoes. But ultimately, he did get a chance to pitch in Major League Baseball, and so he started his first game for the Texas Rangers. And the opening of his book is the story of that first game that he pitched. And I don't want to steal his stories. He may want to tell you that story, but let me just say it didn't turn out all that great. And wasn't what you hoped for. There were a few home runs hit off of R.A. Dickey that day. In fact, I think there were more home runs hit off of R.A. Dickey that day than maybe. That's good. Okay, no. All right, well, you'll have to read the book to get the details. But once again, R.A. faced a monumental challenge, and yet he overcame that. So you want to hear from him. You don't want to hear from me. I want to give him the award. What a great story he's got, though. And again, not just a baseball story. It's also a story of spiritual triumph as well. So, R.A., come up here with me. I am delighted to present to you today the College of Business, Lipscomb University College of Business Heroes of Business Award. And this is from Tiffany. As far as I know, Tiffany's the best you can get.
Thank you.
Mr. President, I hope that's okay in the budget challenge that we're facing. But we wanted the best because you had the best season in the history of Major League Baseball. So congratulations as a hero of business.
Thank you. Thank you.
One of his closest friends is our baseball coach here at Lipscomb, Jeff Forehand. And I'm delighted today that Jeff is able to be with us and to introduce his close friend, R.A. Dickey. So will you join me in welcoming officially to introduce R.A. Dickey, Jeff Forehand.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm honored to be able to introduce R.A. If you think about trying to introduce one of your closest friends, and when we have to get out of here in 15 minutes, it's going to be hard for me to, I'm going to leave something out. So he is, the one thing that I want to say about R.A. is he's going to be the same person today that he was yesterday. Award, no award, he's been the same guy and the same person for a lot of years. And to know him as some of you guys do and the relationship that we have, he spoke about that in chapel, and I tell our players all the time that everything we do is about relationships. And we have had a great relationship going back to my dad and him playing back for my dad and what we were able to get together out of all that and how we've grown through all the hard times that he's been through in his baseball career and all the obstacles that he's had to get through. You know, the UCL, and you know, he was at my house having dinner before he went to Texas to what he thought was going to be meet Nolan Ryan and throw the first pitch, and all the stories that we can go back and tell how that didn't go like we wanted to. But I remember his comment to me after it didn't work out. He called me one day if I could pick him up at the airport on the way home. And I was like, "Why are you coming home?" He's like, "Well, I'll tell you when I get there." And it was you know, a devastating thing, but his comment through the whole thing was, "We'll make it up when we get to the big leagues." That's pretty tough. You lose out on being a first-round draft pick. You lose out on all the work that you've done to get there, and that's what you're going to stand. That's going to be your platform. We'll make it up when we get to the big leagues. And through all that trial and tribulation of getting to the big leagues, he's the same person today as he was yesterday, Cy Young or not. It's a pleasure for me to introduce my good friend, R.A. Dickey. Love you.
I love you. Thank you. That's about as many introductions as a man could have. I think that was incredible. Thank you very much for all that. But before you put me too high up on a pedestal, you know, I would be remiss, and I might get emotional here because I'm completely raw from yesterday. You know, we were fortunate enough to win the Cy Young and all that, so it's a great day. But just remembering, like I'm looking around the room, and seeing so many people who have invested in me in a way that has transformed me. And it's an honor to get to share it with people who have really made a commitment to take the time and the energy and the resources without asking for anything in return, and an effort to impact somebody that they thought that they loved. And I'm the product of that. So please, the standing ovation should be for, everybody that has poured into me in a way that has been transforming for me. So you guys know who you are. Thank you for that. I love you and I appreciate it. With that, I'd like to just say, when I got the call, I thought to myself, I play baseball, so to be recognized as a hero of business, I'm thinking, what capacity does it relate? How is it relatable? And I think the way that, and what I'd like to share with you today in this forum and in these moments that I've been gifted with you is the importance of reinvention. Now, I started as a conventional pitcher. When I was drafted out of the University of Tennessee, I was drafted because I threw hard, right? And I was a good competitor, and I loved to compete. Ever since I was chasing little kids around the Quiddy gym, watching Ricky play and watched Philip play, and a bunch of names that you may or may not recognize that I certainly recognize. I remember running under the bleachers when my Meemaw and Granddaddy would take me to the games over and over again. And I remember Ricky was dating Debbie at the time, and I remember how cool it was that he dated a cheerleader. And so eventually I tried to do the same thing with my wife, Ann. But she wanted to watch people. I mean, she wanted to play the sport instead of cheer on people, which I really respected. And I would be remiss, too, if I didn't bring her up. I mean, to have someone who knows the worst things about you and loves you despite those things is a real example of a peek behind the curtain this side of eternity, My story isn't necessarily one that's all peaches and cream, and I think that's why it's so rich. And I'm so thankful for it. And, of course, it was dark for a while, not only professionally but personally. And to have a woman who stood beside me and said, R.A., I know you've made mistakes, and I've made mistakes too, and I want to love you, warts and all. That's a transforming relationship. And the way that when I came up, when I grew up as a human being, I had some tough things go on early on. I was sexually abused when I was 8, and I was a product of a divorced home, and so I had some things that were outside of my control that were happening. And of course, in those moments, you don't really know how they're going to transform you as you grow. And, I would build up these walls of didn't want to trust, didn't want to go deep, didn't want to, I wanted people to believe that I was this or that. I wanted to project an image that I wanted people to love because I felt so unlovable inside. And that's the great lie that's perpetrated, I think, when something like that happens, is that, and that's why you don't tell somebody when it happens, is because you think they're going to throw their arms up and run the other way as fast as they can, and you already feel so damaged already that it makes it really difficult. And so that's what I did. I built up walls. I would hang in the shadows, not really revealing who I was as a human being. I mean, so much as to the first time I ever talked about it was when I was 32 years old, and I was already been married for 6 or 7 years. So you can imagine what that does inside the relationship, the marriage relationship. So I had to be okay with my wife saying, you know what, you lied to me, I'm sorry, but I need to go another direction. And I had to be okay with that. But for her to say the opposite, it was a real glimpse of a picture of how Christ loves us. And it melted me on the spot. And starting from about 6 years ago, and hopefully for the rest of my life, I've really been interested in unpacking what it is to live authentically as who God created me to be. And that means being self-aware about my faults. It means embracing what I'm good at. It means all those things. I think Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. And I tried to put that to the test over the last 6 years of my life when I started to possess the equipment to unpack the things that were hard and take a step forward. And I think that's really the definition of maturity, probably. as I've grown is how do you hold what's beautiful and great and glad and joyful about life, and how do you hold what's broken and cruddy and the parts that you have to grind out? How do you hold those simultaneously and take a step forward? And that's what I've tried to learn to do, and it hasn't been easy, and I've harmed a lot of people in the wake of that. So I've gotten real good at repenting. And nothing will teach us humility. And I don't give my kids, I give them the greatest gift when I have harmed them in some way, whether it's by an evil glance or by a raised voice. When I sit down there in front of them and say, you know what, I'm so sorry for that. I should have never done that. Will you forgive me? I give them a gift in that. And so that's done a lot for me. And it's helped grow me as a human being. It's helped grow me as a pitcher, because I'm constantly trying to unpack what it is to throw a good knuckleball. I'm constantly trying to hone my craft in a way that will make me complete. And of course, I probably will never get there. I think Phil Necro said, the first time I ever met him, he said, it might have been Charlie Huff, I learned how to throw a knuckleball in one day. And it took me a lifetime to throw it for strikes. So you're always trying to tinker with it and make it your own. And, the knuckleball fraternity is tight. There's only been about 60 or 70 guys in the history of all of baseball who have ever thrown the pitch at the big league level. And so, living, I think there's probably about 5 now. So there's not a lot of people who can teach it. So you're always calling these guys. They're like the Jedi Council of knuckleballers. They're like, so I'm reaching out. I'm trying to get whatever I can. And they've all given me just selflessly, generously, pieces of themselves. And I've tried to take that, invest or add what my own personality is to the pitch. And that's what you see when you turn on the TV presently and see me pitch. But I'll never forget, when I'm first learning it, being so frustrated. Ricky would walk in on me in the Innsworth gym, and he would see me throwing a ball countless times against a brick wall over and over and over again. Here I am, father of 3, trying to figure it out in some gym with a baseball. I mean, it's ridiculous, when you think about it. But that's what it took. It took 30,000 repetitions at trying to get the feel right and the grip right. And so people all the time ask me, what did you figure out? How did you, why the overnight stuff? And the answer is always the same. It's an organic process. I have not arrived, nor will I ever arrive. It's the journey that's so important and so fantastic. And so to that end, I'm always searching for an edge. And this year, I made a discovery. And that discovery was, I can change speeds with my knuckleball. I can throw it for strikes. Now, how can I change elevations? And all of a sudden, I figured out if I shorten my stride. There are no Yankees fans in here, right? I'm afraid. Here I am telling my secrets to everybody. Don't call Steinbrenner. Don't call anybody on the Yankees. That's just a disclaimer. Please don't do that. So I shortened my stride a little bit and figured out how to get underneath the knuckleball a little bit more so that when I wanted to elevate it, I could do that. And all of a sudden, I started striking out a lot of people, because when they see a knuckleball come in with no rotation, and all of a sudden the bottom falls out of it, and it does that somewhere in the strike zone at some angle, 8, 10 out of 10 times, and then all of a sudden you can throw one that looks like it's going to go down and it stays straight, you get some of the funniest swings you've ever seen. It is so fun. I actually threw a knuckleball this year that a guy swung at, and it hit him in the chest. And so, I don't know. I've heard stories about that kind of stuff, but I've never myself, performed such a feat until this year. So, there's always something to grow. There's always some area to grow into. And I am not who I want to become. I'm not. And I'm going to make a lot of mistakes, and will continue to do so. But it's all in the pursuit of trying to live a life that I feel like God has authentically created me to live. And it's going to get messy. I'm going to harm my wife in some way again. I'm going to harm my child. And I say that to say that I'm going to, say a word that might shame them instead of encourage them. Or I'm going to mess it up. And I have to be able to, catch myself doing that, be self-aware enough to know when I'm doing that, and change. And for that to happen, for me, I had to be brought to the end of myself, you know. And I was. And God said, I've got a different plan for you. And so go ahead and pull the garden hose out of the tailpipe. I have hope for you. And that was the one thing. So as lonely as I got, and I came to know Christ as a 13-year-old on my knees in the upstairs of the Bartholomew's house. And so the gift I was given in that moment is that I would never be alone. Now, I might feel lonely, and I did, and there's plenty of times where I still do when I grapple with things in my past, but I'm never alone. And so that gave me the hope to keep going. And I'm so thankful for that, because I would not be here if that were not the case. And I pushed the envelope between then and now a few times. But at the end of the day, I feel like if I can try to live the next 5 minutes well, over and over and over again, I'll be able to lay my head on my pillow at night and not have a regret. And have any of you guys laid your head on your pillows at night and done an inventory of the day, like intentionally, and had something that you didn't regret? I mean, that is very seldom that we're able to do that. And I don't do that every night. But there are times when I'm able to say, I was fully committed to the moment, every moment. And such is the case with what I do for a living. I throw a ball for a living. I've been blessed to play a game for a living. I mean, it's really a fantastic thing to wrap your arms around. But in doing so, I also feel a responsibility to do that the best I can possibly do it. And trying to micromanage it down to how can I live this moment well over and over again. If I throw 120 pitches over the course of a start against the New York Yankees, that's 120 separate commitments that I'm making throughout that game. If I can reduce it to that, then at the end of the game I can look back, and whether I've won or lost, I can legitimately say, without the platitudes or the cliches, that I've done all I can do. What's next? Did you beat me? Tip your cap. I'll get you tomorrow. Did I beat you? I'm sure I've got stuff to improve on. And you're going to be ready for me next time. And so that's the mentality that I've tried to live out professionally. And it also carries over directly to the way I've grown as a human being. They parallel each other in the sense that I don't want to waste time. I've wasted a lot of time already. And so I want to really invest in the moment as a human being. And that means that this time with you is not by accident. My time in chapel before here was not by accident. The fact that this is my first appearance after a Cy Young Award on a campus that holds Christ high, that's not an accident. And that's pretty neat to be a part of that. Thank you. So what Turney said was exactly right. You know, I didn't know when I picked this date last year that this was going to be the day after I won the Cy Young Award. But God knew. And we get to celebrate that together. And I get an opportunity to share that with you guys today. And I got an opportunity to share that with the men and women that were in that chapel service today. And I'm the one that gets the gift. I'm the one that gets the gift. So thank you for having me. And thank you for letting me be a part of this campus. And I know I didn't go to school here. But golly, you know, I feel so close to this place because of Ricky and Jeff and so many people in between. So thank you for that. And I'd love to open it up for questions, Turney. Is that what